Welcome to the first Automotive Market Minute. My name is Steven. That is Phil. We're going to go over a couple of observations from the macro automotive market, as well as some of the results from all the aggregate data from our dealers, hoping to give you guys as much value as possible. So, Philski there, slide 2, please.
Sounds good. Coming in with those spring colors. Hope everybody's having a great spring.
I love it. Looking good. So, Phil, tell us a little about these. I know some of this information came from Cox and such. What's going on here?
So, we're going to touch on new vehicle affordability today. We saw fleet sales up 48% year over year in February. So, that is a large reason of why, of what actually kept transaction prices high. We're going to touch on the Manheim Index. We are also going to touch on pool percentage changes. We've been looking at all of our dealerships' competitive pools as a whole. So we're going to touch on those and see how those are kind of varying between different makes. And then lastly, we're going to hit on a couple of recent dealerships' success with Fountain Forward.
Yeah, and to be clear about like the success here, this isn't a brag piece. This is taking the actual just aggregate information and showing why dealers are increasing so you guys can use it for your own success, hopefully. So next one there, Phil. So one of the things is when we're measuring how a dealer or how just overall dealers are increasing or decreasing, we break it in 3 levels. Level 1 is in-market demand and how much you pay for it. You could be billboards, TV, radio, Facebook, Google, TikTok, doesn't matter. You want to broker attention for the cheapest amount possible to get the most opportunity. At level 2 is the conversion of those eyeballs into actual leads or opportunities. So the last thing you want to do is get lots of eyeballs and not have them convert. And level 3 is the lead nurturing phase when your sales team takes over. We break this down because from getting attention all the way through the actual sale, that should be mapped out and organized. If it's not, you'll end up having a hole there. So Phil, go to that little Cox screenshot you have there. So interesting here. This goes to in December 2022, 25.2% of total sales were vehicles with MSRPs over $60,000. In December 2017, that share was 7.8%. So Phil, if you go to the actual Manheim Index there, what's interesting here is we watched the fall happen, coming from summertime going through the fall, and Phil and I kind of predicted this. In the event that these new cars are so expensive and rates are higher, which Phil, what's the Fed update today?
Allow me to show you. Right now, Powell came out, had a meeting this morning, mentioned that he said inflation has moderated somewhat, but there's little sign of disinflation, and they strongly caution against prematurely loosening policy, and they may be prepared to increase the pace of rate hikes. So we saw the terminal rate expectations exploded higher to about 5.6%. The odds of 50 basis point rate hikes in March and May spiked higher, now 50 and 36% respectively. And stocks tanked, treasury yield shot higher, the 10-year yield spiked, the dollar soared, gold puked, crypto puked, and so risk on assets are struggling right now.
Yeah, so how this applies to the car dealerships is we believe that there's not enough used cars based on demand. We think that's going to continue to drive up those prices, or at least they're not going down like they were. And from what we're hearing from our dealerships is it's harder and harder to get these used cars, and new cars are less and less affordable. So, I mean, when you're hearing about Ram trucks in the 60s and 70s, and you're hearing about Jeep Grand Wagoneers in the hundreds, above 100, it's like, everything's a luxury vehicle now. And so I think that's going to continue to be a pinch among other factors that are also getting us to this point. So some of the things that are happening from our dealers, Phil, next one here, is like, this is Integrity Motors. This is a new dealer for us. So the main example here is this. If you're a dealership that during COVID, you had gone dark, if you will, or you just hadn't been being that aggressive, now is the time to get people to look at your own inventory. We focus on core leads, which are ones that come through your site. So don't go out there, spend tonnage on a bunch of brand awareness stuff when it comes down to, if you're not driving as much actual traffic to those inventory pieces and getting them to convert at level 2 and then having your sales team double down. And the fact that the buying cycle is longer. Maybe it was 30 days a year ago. Now it's 60, 65 days. And so in our opinion, based on all the data that we see. And so keep that in mind, that it is time to drive eyeballs to your actual inventory and get the salespeople to triple down on a longer follow-up sequence. Next one there, Phil.
Yeah, and speaking of that, Integrity Motors is a great example. They came to us with a couple of issues. One of those being just being able to hold their sales team accountable. So we recommended that they change CRM providers and website providers. And upon starting with them in the middle of January, we ended out January with a pretty strong month, 38 sales, and then they eclipsed 40 units for the first time that we had on record. And in part, look at what happened in February. I mean, we saw core lead volume, which is, again, lead volume coming through their direct website, that exploded. Their new site that we recommended was optimized for conversions. It handled an increase in traffic extremely well. So as we distributed that inventory, we also saw those conversions follow. And then now that they have a better CRM, and I want to give a quick shout out to Chris and Jeff at Integrity Motors. They've done an outstanding job implementing change, getting their sales team buy-in. And you can see what kind of a effect that had on their appointment schedule rate, increasing to 36% in February.
Yep. Next one there. So we'll give you a couple of examples of a couple of Mitsubishi stores here. The Mitsubishi stores, we knew they were going to get an influx of inventory, so we're watching the market. And this is one of the two stores that had just started with us. Massive influx. Again, this is just down to the fundamentals. Level 1, level 2, level 3. Let's spend as efficiently as possible. Let's convert at the highest rate possible. And let's hold the sales team accountable. And that's our objective. Let's not get sexy. Let's focus on fundamentals. And boom, this is exactly what happened with this first Mitsubishi store. Another one that had just started with us.
Let's go to that one.
Let's go to that one. Same thing. Total sales jumped right away into the new system. Core lead volume jumped right away in January and February. So again, same thing, fundamentals. Follow level 1, level 2, level 3, wherever your store is at. And that is when you'll make sure you reap the benefits, because you're more organized than you were before, hopefully.
Absolutely. And kind of the final piece here, we do not have a slide for it, but we did want to touch on some competitive pools. And so one thing that we wanted to focus on that we don't have a slide for, but is just the differences by makes in terms of the competitive pools for all of our dealers. And so we're seeing a very mixed bag. For example, CDJR dealers, they're really struggling, as not just our clients, but our clients and their competitors in their pool. For CDJR, one pool was down 7% year over year. Another pool was down 22.8% year over year. Another CDJR pool that we had in a little bit more of a rural market was down 34.8% year over year. Just a couple others, a Mazda pool that we have down 12% year over year, and a Buick GMC pool down 27.3% year over year. So some brands have been getting crushed. However, on the flip side, we have had some Mitsubishi stores with a strong February. We saw one pool increase by about 6.3%. Subaru pool that we wanted to touch on, that went up by about 14%. And then one Hyundai pool, inventory's been increasing a little bit. That pool is up 21% year over year. So it's a very mixed bag between different makes.
Yeah, and what's important here is that we're measuring apples to apples. If you're looking at these comp pools, we're choosing dealers that we compete versus. In the pie, the economy and inventory levels dictate the pie. You just want the biggest chunk of the pie. So the last thing we want to do is compare ourselves to year over year, month over month, quarter over quarter arbitrarily when you can't control economic factors. And so that's why we use those competitive pools, and that's what Phil is discussing there. So as you guys are analyzing your pool and your market and your success year over year, make sure you keep in mind that you need to make sure it, or I encourage you to keep it apples to apples, so that we don't lose our minds, because we're definitely guilty of the exact same thing. So that's a little bit of a market update. I'm Steven.
I'm Phil.
We'll see you guys next month.